All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Jonathan Mills Patrick. Welcome to another episode of JMPTV, my self-serving title for this series where I interview some of the coolest startups and get to share their best practices with you so you can learn from their success and some of their tribulations. And today I have Shahram with me with Financial Sense. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into it. If you could just give us the sort of the 60-second lowdown on what Financial Sense is.
So, we're basically the virtual CFO for the small business. We try to provide small businesses an intuitive dashboard that gives them real-time metrics to help them run and manage their business. A good example I like to give people that helps explain it is, let's say you own a restaurant in Knoxville, Tennessee, and do about $1 million in revenue. What we do is we try to provide you a dashboard that gives you key metrics for your restaurant, like your inventory, your debt, your profit margin, or your food cost. And not only that, we would take those metrics and compare them to other restaurants that do about $1 million in revenue in the same area. So you know exactly how well you're performing to other businesses in your industry around you. So that's pretty much what we do.
Yeah, very cool. So I particularly love the part about comparing someone's business to the peers. I imagine we don't have to touch on it right now, but I imagine some of that is what I would call common size analysis. Maybe some of your accountants have worked with you on that, but I think that's really critical for people because oftentimes I see, particularly entrepreneurs of younger companies, they're always comparing themselves to maybe the bigger companies. They want their costs of goods sold to be in line with the bigger companies, and it's just impossible to have the kind of scale that a big company might have compared to you. So I love that you do the whole peer comparison without giving too much away of the secret sauce. Rom, can you kind of share what some of those metrics might look like? Is it done in a pie chart format? Is it
So right now you basically have the metric and there's a red or green indicator, which
okay?
will indicate whether the metric is doing bad or doing poorly. In the future, plan to have like red, yellow, green, so you can see not just when you're bad, but when you're getting close to getting better, or when you're close from going to green to red. So we try to keep it as intuitive as possible. We
Right.
like to think that you can look at the dashboard and instantly know where the problems are.
Very cool. And where did the idea come from?
So the idea came from my family. They came over here from Iran, and they all started their own businesses, trying the American dream.
Right.
But one thing they struggled with was kind of paying attention to the numbers and the financial side of their business because it's kind of scary and also a little complex and overwhelming. And that means it takes time, which you don't really have when you start your own business.
That's true.
So seeing that happen, I knew that there had to be a better way because it did have a negative impact on them.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, so I love that you're sharing that, and this is one of the things that people hopefully the first takeaway they can have from our discussion is the fact that the pain point that you're solving came from something that you not necessarily you were experiencing, but people real close to you were experiencing, and you wanted to figure out a way to solve that. That's where some of the best ideas in the world have come from, is that pain point's near and dear to you, and you're trying to go out and fix that. People ask me all the time, well, where did I get an idea for a business? Just walk around and see what's sort of painful for you and the people you care about and figure out how you can solve it, and you've got something.
I agree with you. Best way to do it is just to get out there and look around and see what you can find.
Right. And are you finding in your experience, I know you went through the CodeWorks experiment there or accelerator, and I imagine you had to do quite a bit of validation as part of that process.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of validation. Even before CodeWorks, I did co-starters.
Okay.
So that also required validation. I've talked to so many people, but I enjoy talking to more and more people because you learn something new every time. And it's important because it doesn't really matter what I think. Like when I have an idea, I have these assumptions. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what the customers think. So the more you talk to them, the more you learn how they think and what they want instead of making these assumptions. And that's the best way to create a viable business and to set yourself up for success.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. Right before you and I got started, I told you I just got done interviewing the guys from Study Loop that were in CodeWorks with you. Alex and Sam, and they said the same thing, and we talked a lot. We sort of hit on that whole idea of validation. So it's just great to hear you reiterate to folks that will be watching that, go out and talk to. You almost made that face of, well, I've talked to too many people. I've just talked to so many people. But there's really no such thing. I mean, just massive validation will save you. Do you feel like it saved you time as you were building things to hear exactly from other people instead of just assuming you were experiencing the pain yourself and you were going to run with it?
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, to hear from them, and then with the MVP, you don't spend so much time creating something and then throwing it out in the market and hoping people buy it. You can create something that's minimally viable and then put it in front of them, and they give the feedback and they tell you what you think, and that saves you so much time right there. You're not, instead of spending 6 months developing something, you spend a month or two doing it, and then you start getting feedback and it gets you on the right path instead of having to redo work because you built a bunch of different features that don't matter.
Absolutely. Very cool. Well, did you early on get a sense that this was going to work and something you really wanted to go after? Was there any time you had any doubts and said, I just don't know if I'm ready for this whole startup thing?
I never really had doubts. It kind of started out like I had the idea, and I was telling all my friends like, "Hey, how cool would it be if you could do this? Like, this would be the best idea in the world." That whole stage you go through, and after a while of doing
Right.
that, I was like, I can't just sit around and talk about it. I got to get out there and do something.
Yeah.
And that's when I put some money down to sign up for a class because I knew if I didn't, and I didn't hold myself to it, nothing would come out of it. So never really had any doubts, but it did take a little bit of time for me to realize that I actually had to get out there and start doing it now, or I never would.
Do you think, and this is, to me, this is takeaway number two for people, is the fact that you said you kind of put some of your own capital, quote unquote, at risk to take a class. And I always tell people your first money should always come from the guy in the mirror or the woman in the mirror, no
Yeah.
matter how much. If it's $5 for a Fiverr logo or whatever it is, just putting some of your own capital on the line to do this. Do you feel like by making that commitment to pay for that class, that sort of solidified that you kind of, well, now I really need to be serious about this now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, uh, I was in college at the time, so I didn't have a lot of money. I'm already
Right,
like living off ramen,
right.
so putting down about $200 for a class was a big deal.
That's a
So,
that's a lot of
but
food, right? That's
yeah,
a lot of
a
food
lot.
gone.
It's a lot, but it was worth it. Even if I knew if it didn't work out, I'd learn a lot from the experience. I could take that away and apply that to anything else I did. So, or the next venture. So, putting your money where your mouth is definitely makes you a little more determined and gets you out there to take yourself to the next level.
Love it. Fantastic. So what's been the toughest part for you so far?
Man, the toughest part I would have to say would be development.
Mm,
Actually building the application. I have a supply chain as well as a business analytics background. Lots of business, numbers, stats, but when it comes to code,
yes.
it's like a whole nother language. I mean,
Us
I
business guys don't know so too much about technology sometimes.
no, no, we don't. And I don't. And I googled some stuff and YouTube some videos, but the return on time wasn't it wasn't very good. So I went out. I looked for a couple months to try to find someone. I was looking up where developers hang out, crash the party a little bit,
Yep.
maybe talk to some people. But luckily, I met my current CTO and co-founder, Leroy Lease, who great developer. He's very experienced and does a wonderful job. If it weren't for him, I'd probably still be building it in Excel right now.
Absolutely.
So yeah, he does a great job. But development is definitely the trickiest part. I mean, even when you have someone that can handle that side
Right.
and work with you on it, development is always tough.
It is. It's always difficult. In my Go Grab Lunch endeavor back in 2010, that was the tough part for me. I had a technical co-founder as well, but as sort of the idea guy behind it and the person trying to move it forward, I felt like I had to know some of it. So the technical side is tough, and but that's why it's nice you kind of got again the pairing of the business person and the technical co-founder, and when you can get that right between those two, it just goes a long way. What's been the easiest thing for you, if there's been anything easy about the process?
Yeah, nothing's too easy, but I would say the easiest, surprisingly, would be the legal work.
Ah,
So something I thought would be expensive, which is hard when you're bootstrapping like us, but and strenuous, wasn't that bad. I found out about the UT Law Clinic. So they provide free legal advice. So with our operating agreement and other legal documents, they help prepare all that for us, and then have it looked over by a professor, which professor is, I mean, well known in the industry. They know what they're talking about. They review everything. They get it done. They do a great job, and the best part, they do it for free.
For free.
So that was great, and it wasn't that hard, which surprised me.
Well, and somewhere a lot of startups go wrong is I tell people not to skimp on legal, but what I'm saying when I tell people that is the whole do-it-yourself idea. If they can find a resource like you guys were able to, a qualified attorney willing to do it and do it right, it's so important, particularly when there's co-founders involved, because no matter how much you like each other, there's always debates down the road. So to iron everything out is
Yeah.
is important. So that was a great answer to hear. I mean, not heard many people say the legal side was the easiest, but it looks like you guys were smart and you just tried to find a way to do it well, but without having to spend a lot of money. Which kind of led me to the next question. You mentioned your bootstrapping, and makes perfect sense. But with where you are in things, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, is there plans to raise money?
Yeah, in the future, but right now, we're sticking to bootstrapping. We think it's the smartest thing to do.
And is that because you
Uh,
feel like the idea is valid of pushing through milestones to sort of more validate your idea and therefore hopefully drive up your valuation when it comes time? Is that part of the thought process?
yes, I mean that's definitely one aspect to it. Another aspect too is when you don't have a lot of money, you get creative.
Right.
When you get creative, you find ways to make more efficient processes.
Absolutely. Great point.
Yeah. So if we can generate revenue and hit certain milestones with a small amount of capital, think of how much better we could do and more efficient we could be once we got an influx of cash from an
Yeah.
investor.
Fantastic point, Shahram.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic point. You're right. People raise money, and when they can get large chunks, sometimes you see them get a little lazy. That hustle that they had early on just sort of goes out the window because they've got some money now. So it's great that you recognize that. You mentioned milestones. What do you feel like you've checked off so far?
So I guess I can name a couple off in the past. Getting through CodeWorks. Um, that was great. Demo day was awesome. I got in front of a bunch of people, got to talk,
Yeah.
got a little PR there, as well as talking to. I had some people sign up to use our software accounting firms
Okay.
here in Knoxville. Um, one, we got our somewhat viable beta out. It's viable, but not a lot of bells and whistles on it yet. So it's nothing too sophisticated, but it was great to get people in and get feedback. And once you start getting that feedback, it's so valuable because your product just gets that much better. And another big one, PYA. So we met
Glad you touched on
PYA.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, huge accounting firm. I mean, great, big opportunity for our business.
Are you able
Um,
to talk about how that came to be? That was one of the things I did plan to ask you. I'm very familiar with the people at PYA, great folks, and a lot of the partners and the accountants. And when you were doing demo day, I remember you talking about them in your pitch, and I was immediately thinking, yeah, that's exactly who you should have partnered with. How did that come to be? Are you able to share that?
yeah, so well, they partnered with CodeWorks for the program, so they provide personal, I guess you could say, like outsourced CPAs for the
Yeah,
company,
yeah.
or sorry, CPA slash CFOs. So they were there at the meetings, and I got to meet the guys in charge as well, and then also, so I've been talking to them, and they kind of understood what we were about, and then I won the Volcourt pitch competition,
Right.
which got me a free meeting with the guys in charge. So once I got in the room, they helped us out with some financial projections, and then I kind of pitched the whole idea of like working with them and tailoring it to them and getting their feedback. So, and that's how that happened. They
And
liked the idea, and we're kind of working with them to get to the point to where we can test it out with some of
do
their
you
clients.
think they'll play a big role going forward? Is there plans for that you can comment on?
Yeah, I mean, having a name like that and working with a name like that definitely provides some credibility to our name when working with other people. Um, and we plan on working with other accounting firms as well. That's a big channel for us to reach a lot of businesses. And if all goes well, it's great to be like, hey, we got PYA, we got no. The multiplier effect on top of that builds credibility and really helps with that curve.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, start to wind it down here just a little bit. A few more questions. Can you tell us what's on the horizon for you? What's next?
So, next big thing is to get our software to the viable point where we can actually start charging people and generating revenue and sales. That's the big day. Hopefully, in the next 2 months, we'll be
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
We just want to get a couple more features in requested by our clients, as well as establish more relationships with accounting firms here in Knoxville, which I'm in the process of doing. A little cold emailing, a little just walking in like, hey, my name's Shahram.
Yeah.
And then also people we've met being referred to them and through other programs as well. And also maybe even other strategic opportunities for us, maybe just not with accounting firms, but with banks or other financial institutions
Brilliant.
or
Yes.
different spins on it.
Yeah,
So that's all.
absolutely. I'm glad you pointed on that because that's another vertical you can go into with this. Absolutely. And we'll talk offline. I can hopefully help you with some of those contacts, both in the accounting. I know a lot of accountants and firms, and I know just a few financial institutions too. So that's great to hear you guys are thinking that through. Where can people connect with you if they want to? Website or?
Yeah, so I mean, our website is www.financial-sense.biz. Our
Okay.
Twitter handle is _financial sense, and Facebook and LinkedIn are financial sense, and that's sense with a C,
With a C.
just in case.
Right, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, it's a little play on words there.
Of course. And how about one piece of advice for anybody that's watching? What's sort of the biggest takeaway you think you could leave them with, or the thing you've learned that had the biggest impact for you?
I guess so. This kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier with putting the money down. Ideas are worth a dime a dozen. It doesn't. It's not valuable. It won't provide any money. It's what you do with the idea. You got to go out. You got to hustle, and you got to do it. It's the person behind the idea. I mean, you talk to a lot of investors nowadays. They're not just looking at what's the best idea. They're looking at who has the best team
There you
behind the
go.
idea. It's more about the people. So if you have an idea, don't just sit around because someone else is going to do it. You got to go out and you got to hustle and you got to do it. That's my advice. If I could give that, I would say that 1,000 times.
Fantastic advice. I say it 1,000 times already. Eric Dobson and I from Major Capital Group are constantly doing presentations to groups together, and that's the thing he and I talk about is that doesn't matter how good your idea is, if your team can't execute it, it's worthless. So fantastic advice. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a lot of fun. I'm sure people are going to get lots of great takeaways. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.